There's many elderly Australians watching today and watching this program who have got grandparents or parents in aged care. They're hearing these reports and they've seen it up front of spending hours in soiled underwear, going days without showers, being forgotten when it comes to food service. What do they do in the meantime? Are they just going to have to put up with that?
Well, we continue to implement the reforms that A, that we've commenced, and B, that have been recommended by the Royal Commission. So, as I've said, we haven't sat idle while the Royal Commission has been going through its process. We've continued to reform a new set of quality standards. The Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission didn't exist before the Royal Commission started.
Sure. But Minister, I want to get to this on a human level. I want to talk about, we're talking about aged care centres now. On a human level, are you comfortable sitting here knowing that all those things that I just listed off are going on today in aged care homes, and that, as of today, has not changed? When will it?
Well, no, I'm not comfortable, Laura. In fact, I become increasingly frustrated and concerned at the continued reports that come out of the sector. It really does distress me, like it distresses family members. But that's why I'm determined to undertake the reforms that have come out of this comprehensive process. That's why the Prime Minister called the Royal Commission in the first place, because he wasn't getting the answers that he wanted when he asked the questions about the sector. And so it is now our responsibility to get on with those reforms. It's not an overnight exercise. Just because we've received the report doesn't mean things change immediately.
It's a big ship to turn around, and you've committed as a down payment $452 million. The sector, according to the report, is underfunded to the tune of about $10 billion a year. That's a long way. That's a big gap to fill. I mean, are we going to see $10 billion a year spent in the budget? Because that's what's required.
Well, you'll see what's required to be spent in the budget, but one of the measures that we announced yesterday was a continuation of increased funding to the aged care sector. But one of the other things the Royal Commission has said, and a number of experts have said as part of that process, that we shouldn't be just giving money to the sector without accountability. I agree with that. We need to put that accountability in place, but to do that, we need to build the systems to do it.
No, you haven't.
And we will do that. And those things are all going to be important. So the underpinning of the sector with appropriate levels of funding, staffing, training for workforce, all of those things are going to have to be put in place. Some of them are going to take some time. The Royal Commission talked about a 5-year time frame, but some things can be done more quickly, and we will continue with the reforms, like, for example, the Serious Incident Response Scheme that starts just in 1 month, 1st of April, which we legislated over Christmas.
Would you put your elderly relatives in an aged care home at the moment?
I have elderly relatives in aged care facilities at the moment, Laura, and fortunately they're having a good experience. The tragic thing is that for some people, the experience is not a good experience. There are a lot of Australians who are getting a good experience in residential aged care, in particular in the country, but there are those, and that's been highlighted by the Royal Commission, that are not, and that's not acceptable. We need to change that. And that's the point of the Prime Minister calling the Royal Commission in the first place, to get the answers that he wasn't getting, and then to implement the reforms that will turn that around.
But can you say when? Months? Years? When will it be fixed?
Well, Laura, as I've said to you, we have been continuing to reform the sector to improve the delivery of care while the Royal Commission has been going. Well, I can understand your cynicism, because when we continue to hear reports of poor quality care, it exacerbates that cynicism, and it distresses all of us. It really does. But it's not going to be an overnight exercise. It would be irresponsible of me to promise that it will be, but we will continue to put in place reforms to continue to improve the sector, and particularly a significant response to the Royal Commission's report in the budget in a few weeks' time.
And just finally, look, you've been in power for 8 years, but you haven't always been the aged care minister, but you are the aged care minister at the moment. But we've failed elderly people again this week. Aged care homes haven't been administered all the vaccines and that's required. That's according to New South Wales, at least, in some of the other states. And last week, 2 elderly residents were given overdoses of the vaccine. It's another example, isn't it, of us not doing the right thing by our elderly Australians?
Well, the incident that occurred in Queensland was unacceptable, and I wouldn't blame that on the aged care sector. That was a doctor who didn't undertake the training that he should have undertaken before administering the vaccine. It should not have happened. And so that indicates a broader problem within the system more generally. But I wouldn't blame that on the aged care system. And similarly, the vaccine rollout is being undertaken, and in some states it's well ahead of schedule. In some states that we're having some issues and working to bring that back into line, and we're expecting that by the end of this week we'll be back on program to complete the rollout in 6 weeks. But we're in a very fortunate position in this country, Laura. We don't have COVID in the community. We're able to properly and methodically roll out and scale up the vaccination process across the country and make sure that we do it properly, because we don't want more incidents like occurred in Queensland last week occurring. There will be some logistical issues and some bumps along the way in the rollout. That's just natural. That's a human part of the process. But we will continue to do everything we can to roll out the vaccination and gradually scale it up as more vaccine becomes available. And as I said, in some states, the vaccine rollout in aged care is actually ahead of schedule. We're having some issues in certain locations around the country. We will overcome those and we will get the vaccination rollout completed to aged care facilities, protecting those who are most vulnerable first.
Okay, Richard Colbeck, really appreciate your time as always. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Laura.